All right, joining me at this time is the director of training for a group called Combat Brain Training. It's mental performance training, as you might have guessed. Let's welcome back to the show Tim Stewart, known as Coach Papa. And today we're going to talk about the science behind combat brain training because it's valuable information for all of us. Let's welcome Coach Papa. Tim, good to have you with us.
Hey, Rick. Yeah, it's good to be back. I always appreciate being on your show. We get confused a lot with mindset training, and we're none of that. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. No, we actually physically train the brain to go faster, and that's a different. We're actually the only ones in the world who are taking the research of a scientist by the name of Dr. Akira Yoshi out of MIT, who began studying the brain. He had his hypothesis was the brain would change immediately with robust stimulation. So they had to really identify, what is robust stimulation? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And technically what it does is when I can push you to a 20% failure rate in whatever I'm doing, we just happen to use our combat brain training arrows to do it. But when I can push you to 20% failure, then the brain wants to fix itself. The brain is the only organ that will constantly repair itself. And when we push to 20% failure, then the brain grows. So rewiring around traumatic brain injury. In the case of stroke, some of the brain has died because of lack of blood flow. But the brain will rewire itself if it gets the right stimulation. A concussion or traumatic brain injury from explosions like in the military or football, the brain doesn't, parts of it aren't died, they're stunned. And in that case, we wake it back up. I've been following another researcher out of Rochester University. She now has a lab at Brandeis University by the name of Christine Greinberger, and she looks at the neural plateau. Why don't we achieve more? Why do we get to a certain level and stop? And in her research, it complements Dr. Yoshi's research. It says when you can push the brain past that comfort zone, again, the brain will grow. Well, you know what researchers do? They keep researching, and they keep researching, and they keep researching. Well, John Kennedy came along, not the president, but John Kennedy, the founder of Combat Brain Training, and his program has taken the research of both Akira Yoshi of MIT and Dr. Greinberger out of Rochester and now Brandeis University, and as we have the first and only practical application for it in the world. So what's happening is we're actually increasing the processing speed of your brain. For a NFL quarterback, what does that mean? He's got 3 seconds to decide, to drop back, take in all the things, shut out 40,000 screaming people, and pick out that one receiver that's going to be open when some 300-pound linebackers closing in on his face. Trevor Harris is a professional quarterback in the Canadian Football League. He started our training about 3 years ago, and this year he won the Grey Cup, which is their Super Bowl. But more importantly, he has surpassed all of Tom Brady's passing ratings. He was an average NFL quarterback prior to getting involved in our training. But the same training we do for Trevor works for an 8-year-old kid with severe ADHD who's been in the special education world and has never been in a mainline classroom. And in his case, his brain is actually overactive, overstimulated, and it's getting things. And our training actually slows his brain down a little bit to be able to translate the world a little bit better. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you have a brain, that's our one and only requirement. If you have a brain and you would like to be a little bit better at what you do, or you'd like to recover a little bit better from something that's happened, we can help.
So give us an example logistically. Let's say we'll take both ends of the spectrum. Let's start with your one example, a child with ADHD. Things are stimulating too
Okay.
fast. Uh, Give us logistically what takes place in your training to slow that brain activity down.
Excellent question, Rick, but you're full of excellent questions. That's why I appreciate you. Um, we do everything with this sheet full of arrows, right? They're colored arrows, red, blue, green, and yellow. They point up, down, left, and right. And through a pattern, we can actually push the brain under enough stress to make it first fail and then grow. Now, in the case of a child with ADHD, we're going to create noise in the room and require him to do the process. So, for example, first we'll have him just read the directions of the arrows. In this case, right, left, down, right, up, down. And we'll time how long it takes him to read the sheet. And then we'll go 3 directions in color: right, left, down, blue, down, right, up, green. So the brain has to anticipate something that's different is coming up. Then we'll do a pattern: right, yellow, down, blue, down, red, up, green. And we start challenging the brain. Then we take the colors and we change them to a fruit. The blues a blueberry, greens a lime, yellows a banana, and reds an apple. And now they have to say up, red, down, green, right, blue, left, apple. Once we get through that, now we have them start tapping on the tabletop. And they're tapping in rhythm so that the energy that's happening up here is coming out into their life. When we're working with athletes, instead of tapping, we might have them take a jump shot, or we might have them throw a pass on a specific color or at a specific time. In the case of one young man with very severe ADHD who was recommended to us by a psychologist, we went in and we try to do all of our training. If we can do it in person, it's the best. Second best is like you and I are talking over a Zoom call, but they have to have the paper printed in front of them. We don't want them looking at any type of a device because the blue light coming back actually affects the brain's ability to work with this. Well, in the case of this young man, we always encourage the whole family to do the training. So that the person with the ADHD doesn't feel singled out. They feel odd enough already. And in this case, the young man within a month was taken out of the special ed classroom, put in the mainline classroom. At the end of his first semester, got his first A ever in a mainline classroom, but was also selected as student of the semester. But in the meantime, Dad, who was a project manager, his projects started coming in under budget, both time and money, for the first time in his career. Mom, who was in sales, her sales numbers jumped by 30% in a quarter, and older sister's ACT score jumped by 7 points. While the focus was on the young man, they were all doing the same training, and each and every one of them experienced a different benefit, but a benefit.
So, how frequently does that training take place?
That's a great, yeah, no, that is, again, a great question. If you go to the gym and you work out and you get strong, but something happens like a quadruple bypass and you have to stop working out for a while, you get weaker and you got to start over at ground zero. The brain isn't like that. By Dr. Yoshi's research, what happens during this training is what's called protein synthesis, as it builds a new neural pathway. After the training, we calm them down. We do box breathing and some other breathing techniques to slow it down so that protein begins to set up. And when they sleep at night, it hardens completely, creating a permanent neural pathway. So each and every time we make the brain grow, it's permanent. But we continue to grow on that. Now, the quarterback who's got a normal, undamaged brain at the moment, his processing speed is going to come up. For the damaged brain, traumatic brain injury, stroke, MS, Parkinson's disease, there's been some neurological damage. The brain first has to rewire itself. So in that case, it's more important to do it every day, at least a little bit every day. In the case of the quarterback, the person who's trying to improve their sales numbers, if they're doing it once or twice a week, they're going to continue to receive a benefit from it. But it all depends on the individual, which is why it's important to have a coach do this. I can send you the arrows. I was at the Construction Safety Council in Chicago for their annual meeting, and I had a guy stand up and take a picture of the arrows. I had him up on a overhead view, and I said, "Thank you for taking a picture of the arrows. I appreciate it, but the magic isn't in the arrows. The magic's in here." Right? If you want this to work and work at its highest level and become the best version of you can possibly become, you need to hire me or someone, one of my trainers, to come in and help you work through it so that it actually physically has the work. Otherwise, you're just reading a bunch of colored arrows on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, I like that statement you made, the best version of you. That's a strong statement.
I've been using a Gemini to kind of tie things together from an AI standpoint. And I had to go out and look at all the research by Yoshi and Dr. Greinberger and one or two others we've been following and said, what will AMP do for anything? And basically what it comes down to, it says this is the perfect combination for human optimization. It's like taking your brain off dial-up and putting it on fiber optics.
Wow.
I'm working, are you familiar with Guillain-Barré disease?
I am not.
I wasn't really either. When I broached somebody, I thought that they were recovering from a stroke, but they said, no, he's got Guillain-Barré. So I had to do a little research. And what Guillain-Barré is an autoimmune disease where the body attacks the myelin coating on the nerves, and it frays the nerves so the signal from his brain to have his hands do something never gets to his hands. It filters out like a leaky water hose. In this case, they had me come in and I started working with him. And when I'd shake hands, he could raise his arm, but his hand didn't move. So when you put your hand in his, there was no response. So it's kind of eerie shaking hands with him a little bit.
Yeah.
But we went through the first level of training, just our basic foundation that everybody gets. And it's about 25 to 30 minutes. And at the end of it, I said, Bob, do your fingers ever move independently? And his wife, she always answers for him, and she says, his fingers haven't moved in several years. I said, I think you need to look at his hand, because after one session, I looked down and his hands are on the table, and they're moving independently. And I put my fist up on the table, and I said, put your hand on top of mine, and he raised it up and dropped it on mine, and he gripped my hand. After his third session, he was able to hold on to a 10-pound kettlebell in each hand.
Wow.
And work his shoulders up and down. Part of the process, the protein synthesis that is happening, starts recoding doing the myelin coating on the nerves, making the signal stronger, which is one of the ways it does work in the brain also, because the brain is electrical signals bouncing back and forth all over the place. And when we can coat those neural pathways, that signal is flowing faster, and as it's flowing faster, you're able to accomplish more.
It's a remarkable story. Let me ask you a question. It's going to sound random, but you said something.
Sure.
Is there a reason why you had him hold kettleballs?
I didn't. He was at the gym.
Oh.
He told me afterwards. Every time I meet with a client who's a stroke recovery or patient of some sort, I always ask them what they've noticed during the week. And this particular time, it was last week's session. He said, I really haven't noticed that much. And a little bit later, his daughter, who's a pharmacist, and granddaughter, who is a speech pathologist, they both showed up because they wanted to observe the training. Well, I don't let anybody observe. If you're here, you're doing the training. And I said, have you guys noticed anything different with Dad and Grandpa? And she said, didn't you tell him, Dad? But what about the kettlebells? And so that's when they explained to me when he was at the gym for his physical therapy. He said, he asked the therapist, could I try holding a kettlebell? And he'd not had the grip strength. He hadn't been able to move his hand in 5 years. And now he's able to not only grip, but hold on to a 10-pound weight and then lift his shoulders up and down. So it's moving right along. It's a miracle. And again, we're the only ones in the world who are doing that. Now, you'll see a lot of apps out there. I'm not going to name any of them, but they'll tell you, oh, we increase your IQ and we do this and we do that. And none of them do. They just make you better at the games you're playing. And if you want to be better at games, yeah, go ahead and grab onto those apps. But part of the issue, as I mentioned before, that blue light interaction with the screen is affecting your brain's ability to grow and do the work it needs to do. That's why it's important that we do everything analog, preferably in person. The largest group I've worked with is 212 individuals in a corporate setting at the Manitoba Institute of Project Engineers. And I had 212 people in the room doing this all at the same time. And then I worked with several one-on-one. I trained 400 ladies from a volleyball club last year, and their club came back with 3 national championships. So it's if you want to be a little bit better, or in a lot of cases a lot better, this is the way to get started, because when your brain's working better, everything works better.
And Tim, we're down less than a moment here, or a minute, so let's keep it brief. You know what? Coming back to your kettlebell story, what about weightlifting and physical exercise? How much does that play into this? Because that brings blood to the brain. And, I'm just guesstimating here based on what I'm hearing. And again, that kettlebell the farmer walk exercise, I've heard there's so much benefit to that. How any of that play into this?
Yes, when they're doing just the arrows exercise, we're increasing blood flow to the brain by 20%. But we also do dual tasking. It decreases the length of time in physical therapy considerably, because the physical therapists, while they're working on the joint or the muscle, they're not reconnecting to the brain. And what we do reconnects the brain. So while they're doing whatever their task is, at the same time, they've got a sheet of arrows going right, left, up, down, right, left, up, down. Now the neurology is connecting to the physical movement, and we're reducing the time in the physical therapy.
I see. Okay. Website, Tim?
Combatbraintraining.com is it's as simple as it can be. My email is just Tim with the number 2 behind it at combatbraintraining.com. We are rebranding for certain environments we're going into accelerated mental performance. Schools don't want the word combat in front of it. The Construction Safety Council in Chicago didn't want the word combat there. And I get their thing, but we're living in combat every day. Whether it's your teenager coming home or driving to, through LA, there's always stuff going on that we need this type of training.
Tim Stewart, always great to have you with us. Very, very valuable and practical information. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Rick. We'll see you again.
See you again. Back with more right after this.